Hi, I'm Jodi Daniels, founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified information privacy professional, and I help provide practical privacy support to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, Justin Daniels here. I am passionate about helping companies address cybersecurity and privacy issues throughout their entire business lifecycle. I help them do that by spotting the issues and coming up with innovative solutions that are practical to implement. I am a cybersecurity subject matter expert and business attorney.
And this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, SaaS, e commerce, media agencies, professional and financial services. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we are creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, visit redcloveradvisors.com. And today, we have a fun duo panel. So we have first with us Tim Martin. Tim has 30 plus years of experience building and leading companies across all domains of business, including executive leadership, IT, technology, sales, operations, product development, accounting, and finance. He has worked across many industry lines, including accounting and tax, captive insurance, healthcare, technology, manufacturing, and distribution. And Tim has 15 years of experience helping accounting and professional services firms grow their practices. Justin, help us introduce Skeet.
Skeet Spillane has over 25 plus years of experience in information security, business process improvement, and enterprise architecture consulting. He has worked with many of the largest of the Fortune 50 companies and has significant experience in government, education, healthcare, and financial services. He brings a unique combination of business acumen and deep technology experience that creates pragmatic strategies and solutions to solve today's complex business challenges. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, Tim, let's start with you. You have quite a varied background.
Mhm.
So, help us understand how you got started in cyber and really the current role that you take today.
Well, my path to Pillar is a lot different than Skeet's, obviously, but it's really a progressive path. So I got started in professional services back in the late 90s with Deloitte, and then ventured out into the market in executive leadership roles, growing companies. But everything that I did and have done to date has touched technology in some way, either designing technology, developing it, deploying it, selling it. So technology really kind of has been at the core. Really my career evolution is kind of taking me through the practice of, or really kind of the user side of technology, and then into the consulting role through information management, and then into security, where Skeet and I connected about 6 years ago.
Wonderful. And so, Skeet, if you can help also, obviously we have your background, but help us a little bit more specifically. How did you find your way to cybersecurity and also your current role with Pillar?
Well, I've actually been in the cybersecurity space for the better part of 30 years. Came out working in the threat intelligence, threat analysis space, and working with federal governments, both foreign and US, to conduct red team, blue team exercises, analyzing threats, understanding risk profiles, and helping organizations to put in strategies to improve their security posture. So it was kind of out of the kind of nuts and bolts that I've really kind of leading the charge on our CISO as a service offerings, working with organizations as a CISO to provide them strategic guidance around their programs to ensure that they've got the right programs in place that effectively reduce their security risk.
So I'd love to get both of your perspectives on the type of issues that you're seeing now in cybersecurity. Just today, I'm been called to work on a matter where company believes they have an intrusion, they have no incident response plan, and they got referred to me, and now we're just going to triage the situation. And sadly, I find that to be the common experience. Love to get your perspective on, what you are seeing right now in the marketplace with the kinds of work that you're doing.
Well, I'll jump in on this. We see today there are really two primary threat vectors that every organization out there, regardless of size, deal with. One is the phishing path, things coming in through email and also through their third-party vendors, which is the second vector. And through those two vectors, we see a lot of different challenges. They could be phishing, could be malware, could be exploitation of patches that are not maintained correctly, or business email compromise through credential harvesting. Could be that a third-party vendor is compromised and their access to your systems allows a attacker to come in through a back door. So through those vendors are doing their job to protect their relationship and the information they have access to.
So I have to interrupt us for just a moment because I couldn't hear you. And I don't know if it was our internet connection or your internet connection.
I had the same issue. So Skeet, you were kind of in and out.
Okay. Kind of in the best spot for let me try this. I apologize, since we're doing this as recorded and moving on, right? So
Yeah, so
we can edit if there.
Have this whole part cut.
Okay, I'm gonna move to a different location where I know I was down in the office, because if there was any potential for video, my dogs sometimes will decide that they don't like the the Amazon guy, and in general it's not a problem, but sometimes they do lose their minds. I can sit up here, I know I've got good signal. With the background you won't see anything, but just in case they go nuts. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. So do you want me to just pick up with my response or the lead in, or how do you?
Just cut that whole middle part. So pretend we didn't hear any part of that answer. Just
Okay, good. So I'll handle this question. So we see that there are two primary threat vectors that all organizations, regardless of size, are dealing with today. One is through the email path, phishing attacks, spear phishing attacks, ransomware, malware, exploitation of vulnerabilities which may or may not have been patched. And then the other is through third-party vendors, where credentials are exposed to third-party vendors to necessitate business. And those credentials, when those vendors are compromised, become weaponized, and they're able to be used back into your organization because you have this trusted relationship. And both of those require two primary components. One is making sure that you're following proper hygiene within your organization, but the other is making sure that your partners are also following that same good basic hygiene to ensure that their credentials are not being harvested, or that their security posture is not being compromised, which puts you at risk.
So now that, considering those risks, considering we've been remote working now for the majority of people for 8+ months, what are some of the trends, the increased risks? I mean, maybe take some of those, coming in through third parties. Are you seeing more of that? Are you seeing something a little bit different? I'd love if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing that's a little bit unique or different given the remote work situation. That would be great.
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of targeted phishing, spear phishing attacks, trying to leverage the COVID, the fear that's in the marketplace, and going after users, trying to get to their credentials so that they can compromise the email. And that could be a launching point either into your organization or into one of your partners' organizations. We're also seeing the compromise of local endpoints where they are targeting misconfigured routers or ill configured routers where they don't have the right level of security on a home router, because that now is one of the primary access points for people, and people are able to compromise those, get into the local user's endpoint, and then use that as a hopping point back into the organization. Tim, I'll open to you so you can kind of.
No, absolutely. And I think it just kind of back to Justin's question too previously. I mean, if you kind of zoom out and think about it really from an enterprise, I think one of the things we see so very often is that cyber security gets really kind of boxed into the IT world. It's viewed as an IT risk, and it's not. It's an enterprise risk, and where it gets lost in an IT project list, it gets deprioritized. Then you see breaches happen, and they seem to be surprised about that. But if you zoom out, what we see it as, it's a real enterprise risk. It touches people, process, and technology, and especially around employee behavior, culture, cyber awareness. So I think part of the answer to your question, Justin, is that they don't really understand and don't emphasize cyber or security as an enterprise risk enough, and really see that as an importance and lead that behavior that needs to be modeled and displayed in the organization to really emphasize the importance of cyber in that area. And to Skeet's point, in terms of the remote work, it's that shift just seem to happen overnight. And the original challenge we saw was just head down, kind of blinders on, trying to make the operational shift. Now we've got to deploy all these laptops. Now we've got to support all these laptops. Now we've got really kind of that piece of it, and security was set aside for a while. In the statistic that I saw, it was issued by Risk IQ, that immediately after COVID and the remote work shift, email phishing attempts went up 350% overnight. So we see that as such a huge risk. You've got poorly protected endpoints, home Wi-Fi's, you've got, and the criminals see that as well. So they're socializing their way in, is where we see a huge risk.
So kind of as a follow-up question, when people or organizations hire you, are you typically hired by the IT department? How often are you being hired by the C-suite? And what is the communication that you have with them to impress upon them the importance of cybersecurity as an enterprise and not strictly an IT problem?
Yeah, I would say that we're probably equal parts between being engaged by the CISOs of an organization and the executive team. And a lot of times, if it is the executive team, it's because they've identified a specific risk and they have concerns about how it's being handled within their organization. If it's within the CISO organization, a lot of times it's because they understand that they have bandwidth or skill challenges that they're trying to expand and need to bring in expertise to extend that team as a force multiplier to really expand upon that. But what I've seen in the way we communicate to the C-suite is really tied to moving the conversation to risk, kind of to the point that Tim was making. It's a risk question. It's a, how do you resolve this, and what are the impacts of this security risk on your organization? Does it become a loss of revenue? Does it become a loss of client or loss of reputation in the marketplace? But also, does it become a regulatory or legal risk from a financial impact through fines or sanctions? So I think when you start putting it into business terms and how the security risk translates into a loss of potential business, it becomes a more tangible conversation.
And I totally agree with that. And I think what we do spend a lot of time on is helping interpret what the findings, what the vulnerabilities, what those are, what those mean from a risk management perspective. And I think that's where the real big disconnect is that, you may conduct a pen test, or you may conduct some type of vulnerability assessment or some scan or some test of some sort, and you deliver findings, but it stops there in most situations. We were having this conversation earlier this week with a partner, and looking at a dashboard, and the real value is not as much in the dashboard. It is, what is that dashboard pointing to? What are the risks? And helping executives really interpret those from a business perspective. And just a simple thing that I talk about a lot is that if your security is not tied to your business, it's not going to protect it. So we spend a lot of time at the executive level really helping them interpret those risks and what they mean for the business.
So for those who might be struggling to get their C-suite to understand this is an enterprise risk, I'm sure you've seen a variety of organizations go from right at the beginning that this is an enterprise risk, it's important, they get it. Other companies, you're convincing, so there's a lot of effort to get them to understand why they need to take it seriously. What are you finding to be successful, or how are you helping to coach? Maybe you're coming in and you're working with a CISO, or you're acting as the CISO, but you might need to work with some others that are at that level to help convince the C-suite this is important, that you need to be taking it seriously. So maybe some tactical stories maybe that you've used, and then the C-suite, they've gotten it.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll tell you one quick story. And client of ours that we were working with, and we were helping them through some business continuity planning. And there was some debate among the executive team that while this came out of a strategic planning exercise, they need business continuity planning in place. There was debate on the executive team as to, well, it's too much, it's a big process, we can't afford that. Yes, we need it. So there was all this debate going on. So two things that we did. One is we said, okay, if you can get the executive team together in a room, bring them all in, let us facilitate that conversation. So let us be a third party. So what we did is we took them through really kind of a whiteboard session that help them kind of break it down into bite-sized pieces, understanding what their critical pieces of their business are. What are the critical processes? And then what are those processes dependent on? What are the critical dependencies? And we took them through that conversation. And at the end of that 2-hour whiteboard session, we had built out the skeleton of their BCP, and every one of the executive team walked out of that session that day with a thumbs up. I mean, they got it at that point. Fast forward through that process, as we begin to develop the processes around, defining those dependencies and connecting that to the revenue of run rate of that organization, and there was a dependency, there was a gap there. And what we discovered is that, and we really helped them, we just kind of put it in front of them and let them do the math. You can't recover based on your current state, you can't recover within the required recovery period. You need to recover within 4 hours, but you can't recover within 72. Well, when you do the math on the revenue loss in that gap, it becomes very, very clear what their risk to their business is. And so I know that's a long-winded answer, but we have a methodology and approach to really kind of walk them through that conversation in some of the processes that we help them with, some of the projects that we help them with. I mean, does that answer your question? I mean, it's really about changing the tone of the conversation from technical finding into business risk.
No, that was helpful. I'd like to understand a little bit about the intersection between cybersecurity and privacy, with CCPA and GDPR that have some cybersecurity provisions in those privacy laws. And so how often are you overlapping when you have these discussions with the C-suite or doing your work, where companies don't even know where their data is and how they're collecting it and using it, which are privacy issues?
All the time. This is actually probably one of the most prevalent things we see out there is organizations don't understand their assets. Our philosophy as a firm is protect first. And by that, we mean that if you put all of the proper defense in depth strategies and protection around the assets that you are most valuable to your organization and to your customers, then you will end up in a compliant state. You may have to put some procedures and policies around it, but you will end up in a much better place if you start with the philosophy that you have to protect these assets. A lot of times when we start with that philosophy, though, we start the conversation around what assets are under protection and where are they. Organizations don't know and they can't answer it. And that facilitates us going through what are your assets, what's important to you and your customers, where do they sit, how do they transmit, who has access to them. And these components alone tend to uncover times where they may not realize that they're handling personally identifiable information, or even in some cases PHI, that is sitting out there in their organizations. And by it sitting out there and them not being aware of it, they can't develop a good strategy around that. So I would say we work in that crossover space a lot, and we're not on the privacy side. we want to protect the assets, and that's where we like to work with privacy officers to make sure that they are putting the good policies and procedures around it, understanding the impacts of the regulations and laws, and that we can put in the right strategies from a technology and security standpoint.
Yeah, and just an add on to that too, and what adds a layer of complexity is really in your architecture. So where you've got this migration to the cloud, the mindset is, well, my data is in the cloud, so it's secure, and that's totally false. So Azure and AWS, I mean, all these cloud providers, that they provide data storage, but not data security. And so it's important to understand the architectural changes required in managing that data as you're migrating it off-prem on into the cloud, or maybe there's a hybrid architecture there. But that, in terms of directly around what kind of data do we have and where does it live, really is driven by that whole process and helping people understand that the change in architecture that's required in that migration.
Yeah, I was just talking to a company earlier this week that is on AWS, and the answer was, it's on AWS, it's fine. I don't have to worry.
We hear that often.
It was great. It was fun. So I'm curious, Skeet, you had mentioned that you work with the privacy officers. So you often act as a CISO to a company. The companies that you work with, do you find that they have a privacy officer, or is it maybe someone who's been, donned the hat of also tackle privacy?
The latter. In a lot of cases, it's some poor internal counsel who all of a sudden got a new hat.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
And that's usually the better case, because a lot of times it's not even someone who has the tactical and technical expertise to be able to interpret the privacy policy, privacy legislation. Sometimes they're not even a lawyer. They tend to be someone who is in HR or in a compliance or an internal audit functionality. So a lot of times we are working with them to try and understand what they need to do and how do they need to engage a privacy officer or establish a privacy program that is going to really address the regulations that they have to adhere to.
Wonderful. Well, you both all day are helping companies with complex security questions. So how do you do this personally? What advice might you offer someone, an individual, of how to best protect their information? So if each of you could share a tip, Tim, I'll ask you maybe to go first. That would be great.
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot of moving parts in cyber, and we find that a lot of people, they don't know what they don't know. And our goal really is to help them simplify that and really kind of help filter out a lot of the noise. Really, it's and Justin kind of pointed to it earlier. Our whole approach is around really 3 easy steps: is understanding where your data is, or really what sensitive data you have, where does it live, and then how do you build protection from really what we talk about from the inside out. So from that point of data, where that data lives, building that multi-layered defense in depth really strategy from the data out. A lot of people build a moat around the castle and they want to protect the whole thing. And really from a budget standpoint, helping them understand really 2 things. Building a roadmap based on really 2 criteria. What is the level of risk? And then what is their budget availability or resource capability? And then build a roadmap. Don't, what we say is no strategy is the worst strategy. Don't be kind of paralyzed by what you don't know. Find somebody to help you, and then let's build a real strategy around understanding where your data is and or what your data is and where does it live, and then move out. And the other thing that I would say too is we answer this question a lot, and we see this as a blind spot, is that compliance equals security, and that is 2 totally different things. And when you've got a compliance only culture, and you find that a lot in highly regulated industries, you've got a compliance only culture, we find a lot of security gaps, and being able to really kind of in a real clear, guided way help really kind of advise them through that process.
So thank you. Skeet, if you can share, so I think that was very helpful for a good kind of simple step-by-step for a company on where to start. Skeet, what might you suggest for an individual? So someone listening.
One tip.
Huh?
One tip.
Oh yes. So one tip. It's hard. There's so many that you might pick from.
Actually, it's easier than you'd think. It's multi-factor authentication on every.
Ooh, Justin
I win
wins.
the award.
He wins the award. He whispered it in my ear. I have no awards.
So there's absolutely nothing better at breaking the chain of an attack. Multi-factor authentication, whether it's on, and where people miss on this on a personal standpoint, it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, it's on your banking accounts, it's on any account you have out there. You need to make sure that you have multi-factor in place. I know it's an extra step, but the level of complexity that it introduces into the attacker's world makes them move on. They are not going to go after the very difficult and sophisticated attack of attacking a multi-factor account. They will just move on and find the ones that are open.
Great tip.
So one thing off the cybersecurity topic. Ooh, that's a new word. I might have to use that. Maybe each one of you can answer, what do you like to do for fun?
Go ahead, Skeet.
Well, mine's pretty much anything athletic. I like to be outside, so it could be anything from skiing to playing lacrosse, playing tennis. I'm always outside.
Yeah, it's similar here. I love to play golf. My wife and I love the outdoors, hiking, and kind of where we are in our life cycle. Our kids are grown, and so we spend a lot of time together hiking and just kind of traveling and doing things together. But I love to play golf. I grew up an athlete as well, and my bones are older, so I can't do a lot of stuff that Skeet, the young guys like Skeet can. But I spend a lot of time on the golf course.
Well, thank you so much for all the insights that you've provided. How can people stay in touch with you and learn more?
Tim, I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, well, it's easy. So ptechcyber.com is our website. So we've got a lot of resources there. People can tap into blogs and webinars and podcasts such as this. And we've got white papers, and there's a ton of resource there. We spend a lot of time educating. So you can connect with us there on our website. Our phone numbers there are posted. You can find us there. Our emails are easy: tmartin@pillartechnologypartners.com, cspillane@pillartechnologypartners.com. So we're embarrassingly easy to get a hold of, and and available.
And I'd add one more to that too, Tim, is that on our website, we also have the ability to sign up for an
Yes.
hour with one of our CISOs,
Yes.
where you can actually hop on a call. It's free of charge, but to kind of discuss where you're at, what, if you're struggling with a difficult issue and just want some guidance or advice, we're more than happy to spend a little bit of time on there and discuss it.
Thanks, Keet.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It was great to have you on the show, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Well, thank you both for having us. We are very grateful for the opportunity to visit.